I live?
Hey there, Raiders! Happy World Read Aloud Day! Today we join millions of readers and writers in over 170 countries, and we gather to celebrate our right or our freedom to read and write. And today we have a very special guest with us.
Today, Raiders, we have Ms. Betsy Uhrig. Ms. Uhrig, good afternoon. A little bit about Ms. Uhrig, born and raised in the greater Boston area, as we were talking about yesterday. She's an author of great books like The Polter-Ghost Problem, which is a Blue Bonnet Award nominee here in Texas, my friends. Another great title is Double the Danger, and The Zero Zucchini. Sounds like an interesting title. Welcome to the Dweeb Club, which we have here. And last but not least, Mind Over Monsters. So when you guys have a chance, we have those books at the library. You can check them out. But for now, we're going to give Miss Betsy Uhrig our undivided attention. And Ms. Uhrig.
All right, thank you very much for having me. You've already introduced me, so you've introduced my books. I am sitting here right now with my little boy, Max, if you can see him. There he is. And he's been attending all my World Read Aloud sessions today, and he's been about that excited for all of them. So, you know, I'm getting a real rise out of him here. I have been reading from the same book pretty much all day, and so I was thinking if you want to trip me up a bit and make me read something I'm not used to, I'd be happy to do that. So do you want to vote among which of the books you want? I'll give you a little info about them. This is about a group of 7th graders who see themselves 5 years into the future as seniors in high school on some video, and they're not very happy with what they see. This is called the Polter-Ghost Problem, and this is the one that was the Blue Bonnet nominee. And this is about 3 boys who discover a haunted orphanage. And Double the Danger and Zero Zucchini is about a boy who helps his aunt turn her very dull book into something much more interesting by doing the stunts for her. So, anyone have a vote for which one they want to hear?
I say Polter.
What do you guys think?
Polter or Dweeb Club?
Polter. The second one?
Polter.
Okay. Okay, a little bit about the Polter-Ghost Problem. I started writing it when my nephew was 11. He's now graduated from college, so it was a while ago. At the time, he was very, very interested in those TV shows where people would go to places that were allegedly haunted and try to use all this scientific equipment to find out if they could find anything paranormal going on. And I don't think they ever did, but he really liked the shows, and he liked anything that was creepy and scary and ghosty. So I decided I'd write this book for him. And I wanted to make a really creepy, eerie, kind of atmospheric book that would be very scary, and that, you know, when he put away at night, he'd you know, have terrible dreams, because I'm that kind of aunt. So I outlined the book, and I was like, okay, there's going to be ghosts, and there's going to be this other kind of ghost, which is a poltergeist, and it's all going to be very terrifying for him. And I started writing, and I was writing the first paragraph of the book, kind of getting used to the character's voice. And I took a severe wrong turn in terms of making it very, very scary. So I'm going to read the first paragraph here, and you try to pick out where you think I got off the road to scary and ended up on the road toward something else. The hedge was as tall as the 3 of us standing on each other's heads. It was also thick and prickly, with the kind of needles that would definitely poke at least one eye if we tried to push our way through the branches. The hedge was growing around a rusty iron fence, topped with the kind of spikes that would definitely rip our pants and our underpants if we tried to climb over it. And that was if we were lucky. We didn't want to picture what would happen if we weren't lucky trying to climb over those spikes. So there I was. I've got a hedge, got scary stuff behind it, got 3 kids, and I'm mentioning underpants in the first paragraph. So that's just kind of the writer I am. And it was clear from that moment that I was not writing a horrifically scary book. I wasn't writing horror. I was writing a ghost story, but more of a funny one. So I just went with it because I don't think there's a single book of mine that doesn't mention underpants. And I don't think I have a single book that doesn't mention something to do with the Lord of the Rings either. That's just me. That's just the kind of person I am. So I have to live with it. I have to accept it. Okay, so the chapter I'm going to read is chapter 7. In this chapter, the three boys, Penn, Jasper, and Aldo, have been led by a ghostly, transparent boy from the soccer field near where they live to the abandoned house surrounded by the tall hedge, which I was mentioning in the first paragraph in which I went awry. So they've arrived inside the hedge and now they see the house. Is there any way that house could look more haunted? Jasper asked. Maybe if it had some sheets in the shape of people sticking out the windows and yelling boo, I said, picturing a Halloween card my great aunt had sent once. Maybe we were all picturing something cartoonish and harmless because Jasper started walking toward the house and Penn and I followed without questioning the wisdom of doing that. It was really quiet inside the hedge. Ticks don't make any noise, but there were no other bugs in that field making the usual summer bug sounds. And no birds were chirping or cawing or making any of the other usual bird sounds. All we could hear was the swishing of our own footsteps through the long grass and its ravenous ticks. As we got close to the house, Jasper said, "That's something you don't usually see with typical haunted houses." "What?" "A sign. See that metal signpost near the front steps?" "Does it say haunted house this way?" Penn asked. He had to wear glasses to see the blackboard at school, but he refused to wear them in real life, as he called not being in class. "No, it says Grouch Orphanage for Orphans," Jasper said when he was near enough to read the words under the mildew and rust. "Orphanage for orphans," he said. "Isn't that kind of repetitive?" "Does seem like overkill to have it twice," I agreed. We arrived at the front step of the haunted house, which we now knew was actually a haunted orphanage, which didn't make it any less creepy for anyone. "Watch that broken step," said Jasper, climbing up, "and that one, and that nail sticking out there." The obstacle course didn't end with the top step. The porch was seriously tilted and missing several important boards. A wooden screen door with only torn remnants of screen was propped against the house. The front door itself was closed, and there were no little windows in it for peering through. "So," I said, "do we go in?" "It wouldn't be much of an investigation if we didn't," said Jasper. "We'd have to go home in shame," said Penn. We pictured ourselves going back through the hedge, back through the woods, back to the soccer field. We pictured ourselves wondering what was inside the haunted orphanage. We pictured ourselves shrugging, going home, going through the rest of the summer, going back to school, all without knowing anything more than we knew now. There was no way. We weren't going home without looking inside the haunted orphanage. So we did what any trio of red-blooded middle school boys would do. We argued about who would open the front door and go in first. Penn lost, as usual. He batted away some cobwebs as he approached the door. Then he reached for the door's handle. It was one of those handles that you have to grasp with most of your hand and then use your thumb to press down a thumb-shaped lever on the top. But this one was so big that Penn had to grasp with all of one hand and use most of the other to press down the lever. The lever moved with a loud click, which sort of surprised us. But when Penn pulled on the handle, the door didn't budge. "I need some help here," he puffed, yanking at the handle, his hair falling in his face and his face turning red. He had both of his hands on the handle, and there was nothing else on the door to hold on to, so I did the cheesy comedy thing of grabbing him around the waist and pulling on him. "You're going to make me puke," he grunted. "Stop that right now." I did, and Penn let go of the door to get his breath and possibly some of his breakfast back. "Allow me," said Jasper, who'd been standing on the sidelines watching the cheesy comedy. "Fine," said Penn. "It's very heavy, though. We're stuck. We're both." There's also the possibility, said Jasper, grasping the handle and lever with one hand, that the door opens inward. Sure enough, as Jasper pushed instead of pulled, the door opened inward with a rasp of rusty hinges and a shower of paint flakes, dust, cobwebs, and a couple of those spiders with the long, tangly legs. Jasper let go of the door as it swung open, and we all stood at the threshold and peered inside the house. At first, we couldn't see anything in the gloom. Did anyone bring a flashlight? Jasper asked. It's broad daylight, I said. Why would anyone have brought a flashlight? I did, Penn said. He tried to hand it to Jasper, but Jasper swatted it away. You first, Jasper said, remember? So Penn went in, his flashlight roaming across walls covered with equal parts ugly trellis wallpaper and mold, and across carpet with bald spots and stains. Leave the door open, said Penn, like we were chuckleheads. We stood in the entrance hall, trying to get used to the inadequate light. Where to? Asked Penn, moving his flashlight beam across the options. Let's start with the room on the left and try to move clockwise around, said Jasper. This seemed logical. Penn pointed the flashlight to the left. As soon as he did that, almost as if he'd caused it by poking his light where it didn't belong, there was a crashing sound from deep inside the house. If you heard a noise like that in your own house, you'd assume that whatever your family kept all its breakable dishes in had crashed to the floor. This was followed by a high, shrieking sound like a windstorm. If you heard like that in your own house, well, you wouldn't. It wasn't an indoor sound. So that's chapter 7. They're about to meet the ghosts, but they haven't yet. And I have time for questions. If anyone has questions about me, books, writing, cat care, whatever you want.
Yes, we certainly do. We have our first student here. Stephanie, go ahead and ask a question.
I just wanted to ask, how does it feel when you know that your books have been recognized by students or Texas or?
Good question.
Oh, man, that is a good question because, you know, sometimes there are these awards that you can get from other writers, like, you know, other writers will read your book and think it's good. But when it comes from kids, those are the people I'm writing for. And, you know, honestly, I don't care what adults think of it as long as the kids like it. So that kind of award means a lot to me. And coming from a place like Texas where there's so many different kinds of kids, it really is an honor. It's amazing. So very happy about that. Thank you for whoever might have been responsible.
Miss Betsy, in writing for children, like you said, not really caring what the adults think, is there a certain inner kid in you that you draw from for the subject matter in your books?
Yeah, I have this theory that my inner child is a 12-year-old boy, and because that's sort of the voice I mostly write from. And I think the thing is that middle school and to a certain extent high school are very sort of formative experiences for anyone. And you kind of keep going back to it, even when you're an adult, to sort of make sense of the rest of your life. So part of you is always still kind of there, working out those issues from back then. And if you can do it from a standpoint where you're laughing at it, which is what I try to do, it's a lot easier on you. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm coming from.
Do we have a question on this side of the room?
So how'd you feel, like, what'd you think when you published your books?
Well, it's weird because I've worked in publishing for all my adult life. Like that's what I went into when I was young, and I've been doing it ever since. So I've worked on so many books and seen so many books get published that it's kind of like, oh yeah, I worked on this book and here it is. And oh, this book mentions my name in the acknowledgments and that's nice. But having it be your own book is like a whole different level. And I thought I would be like sort of blasé about it and like, oh yeah, well, whatever. But I wasn't. I was not blasé at all. It was so cool, especially when you first see the hardcover book with your name on it and, you know, all your little words in it. And it's out there in the world and you can look yourself up on Amazon. It really is the most amazing feeling.
Great information.
We have another question right here, Michael.
What are your other inspirations other than your son watching Ghost TV shows?
The other inspirations for the other books are a little different. This one, which is where the kids see themselves in the future, came from me trying to write a time travel book and failing. I was trying to write a book where a kid would go into the future and then come back into the past and know about the future and change the past. But then I realized that if you change the past, you change the future. And so when he got to the future, it would be completely different. And my brain was exploding. So I decided that I had to scrap that book, but I still wanted to take the sort of seeing your future aspect of it. Like, what if he saw his future in a way that the future never changed? He just kept seeing it and he didn't like it. So that's what I did. I made the future that he's seeing, he's not in the future. He's seeing it and he can't affect it. And that was a lot easier for me. So that one sort of came from a mistake. This one, Double the Danger and Zero Zucchini, came from a friend of mine who wrote a children's book, and she didn't have kids of her own, so she asked her niece to read the book. She handed her the stack of paper that was the manuscript printed out, and she said, "Take a highlighter pen and just read my book and tell me if you find any like dull parts or parts you don't understand or just anything that's not like entertaining you." And I was thinking that this was such a lovely thing for the niece to do. This was going to take hours of her time and she had to pay attention. And the report was great. She loved the book. And so all was good. But then a little evil part of me in my brain was like, what do you think would happen if the niece hadn't liked the book? What if she'd gotten the book and the book was so dull that she was like, all right, I'm just going to highlight the whole thing and tell her to scrap it and start over again? Which is what happens to the kid in the book. And the moment he starts out, it's about frogs growing a prize-winning zucchini. And he knows that it's not a book for kids his age. It's not going to be interesting for kids his age. So he sort of panics and he has to decide like what he's going to tell her and how to help her out. And that's sort of where the idea for that book came from. So it's life experiences, but very different ones, or people you meet.
Interesting. We still have time for another question. Yes. Who's got another question? Ms. Kala, you had a question?
What's your favorite part about writing books?
My favorite part about writing books is having the new idea and thinking of the new character and how the character is going to sound on the page and, what kind of quirks the character will have. And then I start writing and it's all very fun. And then, I get a ways into it and I'm like, okay, now I have to start really building a book. And it's less fun after that, to be honest, because then you've made yourself an assignment and now you have to finish it kind of. But once I've done that, once I've gotten to the end and I've got a whole sort of book, not a very good one yet, but a book, the fun part for me is really the revising and the editing, because I don't have to worry that I'm not going to be able to come up with it. It's done. And after that, I'm able to kind of tweak it and work with it and sort of work on the details and add, jokes where I want to, or make characters more interesting or fun. And that to me is the good time, when you can just kind of roll up your sleeves, know what you're dealing with, and just sort of play with it.
Ms. Betsy, I think it's interesting how you had mentioned the middle school years are formidable years, and one can always, I find myself in my adult life, as you just mentioned, kind of reverting back to middle school years. And so good question for our students to see and understand is, in your middle school years, can you remember or recall any one teacher that made an impact in you, or really, the light bulb started going off, and for what reasons was it impactful in your life?
Absolutely. I went to junior high, not middle school. So it was 7th, 8th, and 9th, weirdly enough. I don't think most people do that anymore. But My 7th grade English teacher, who I mentioned in the acknowledgments in the Welcome to Dweeb Club, she was just so enthusiastic about what we were reading. Even if what we were reading I considered sort of dull, I'm going to be honest. There were a lot of dead animals that year in the books, and I didn't appreciate that. But she was just so interesting when she talked about books and her love of books. It totally came through. And she also was one of those teachers that goes off on tangents a lot. Like there's a lot of anecdotes in there, which I loved. And so she really, and whenever she'd see you in the hallway, she'd call you a gentleman and a scholar. And I don't know, I just really appreciated that. So, and she'd give you A plus 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 pluses. So she definitely inspired my love of reading and writing. I also had a biology teacher in junior high who, he was a very gentle man. And I don't know if you still dissect frogs, but I guess when kids dissect frogs, sometimes they play with them and like do stuff with the dead frog bodies that's not nice. And he absolutely told us that if he caught any of us disrespecting the life and death of the frog, we were out. And I thought that was really cool, that he was not going to let that happen, that he had that much respect for all life, that he was going to make us respect our frogs. So yeah, you remember these people. You carry them with you.
We ran out of time. I'm sorry, it took you a little bit past the time, but we would like to thank you for the information you gave us, for reading to us on World Read Aloud Day, and we'd like to send you off with our Raider wave. Is that okay?
Oh, good. Let me see.
Okay. On 3, 1, 2, 3. All right, we did. Betsy, thank you so much. Have a blessed day.
Much appreciated. Have a good rest of World Read Aloud Day.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so very much.